Let's talk about the thing that so many men don't feel safe to say out loud. And that is, I'm terrified of losing my hair because I'm scared that I'll lose myself with it. Now we might laugh it off. We might make jokes or use filters or buy products. We'll say things like, it's just hair, right? Or bald is beautiful, right? But deep down that fear sticks. And it's not because we're vain, but it's because for a lot of us, our hair was our proof. Proof that we were still young, or proof that we were still desirable or seen. And when that starts to fade, when we notice the thinning, the receding, the shedding in the shower, we don't just grieve the look. We grieve the identity, right? This episode isn't really about hair though. It's it's more about what happens when your image starts shifting faster than your self-worth can keep up. It's about the quiet identity crisis that so many men go through alone when the mirror starts to change. Because no one talks about the emotional whiplash of losing something that the world told you made you attractive. No one no one tells you what to do when the compliments start to slow down. And when you feel like you've slipped a notch in how people perceive you. And when you look at photos of your younger self and think, man, that guy, he had a shot. Hair loss isn't just cosmetic, it's also existential, I believe. It's especially in a culture where masculinity is often measured by confidence or status or your looks. And when one of those starts to vanish, a lot of men collapse on the inside, right? But let's get honest. Most men weren't taught to build their confidence on something internal, were they? They were taught to perform or to impress or to accumulate. They were taught that strength meant the same thing as control and desire was worth, right? Presence was through performance. And so when your hair stats start to recede, you feel less visible or desirable or magnetic, and you feel more unattractive. You feel almost irrelevant. And in the silence of that shift, a deeper fear starts setting in. If I'm not hot anymore, you might think, am I still wanted? Or if I'm not young looking anymore, am I still valuable? Or if I don't turn heads anymore, do I really matter still? And let's not forget, hair loss, it doesn't happen in isolation, does it? It usually shows up right around the time that other things start shifting as well, right? Maybe you're not as lean as you used to be. Maybe you're more tired. Maybe your career's starting to feel like a treadmill. Maybe you're going through a breakup or have stopped even trying altogether. And so this one small thing, which was your hair, became this symbol of everything else that feels like is slipping. And it becomes a proof that you're losing ground, right? And you're losing time. And you're losing grip on who you thought you were becoming. Because here's the hard truth that we have to face if we want to move through this. And that is that if your confidence can be taken away with your hair, you never really had confidence in the first place. You had comfort, you had camouflage, you had a projection, but you didn't really have integrity. Let's sit with that for a moment, shall we? Because that was quite the assertion. Because this isn't really about blaming or shaming you, but it's about recognizing that for a lot of us, confidence was borrowed and it wasn't built. It was borrowed from how we looked, from who was flirting with us, right? From how many commitments we got, or or from whether we were still in the attraction age bracket, if you will. And there's nothing really wrong with enjoying those things in any way, but if your whole identity though is built on what others see in you, well, what happens when they stop looking? This is where the work begins. This is where integrity and intimacy come in, not as philosophical ideas, but as lifelines. Integrity is that alignment between who you are on the inside and, and how you live on the outside. It means that you're building your confidence from your core, from your values, your presence, your truth. And intimacy is your willingness to be seen as you are. Not because you're impressive, but because you're real. And when you start building your self-worth around those things, well, hair becomes just that, right? Hair. It's not a threat, it's not a verdict, it's not a value system. It's just a feature that changed. But the man underneath, he didn't disappear. He showed up anyway, right? And that kind of confidence is what we're here to rebuild today. The kind that doesn't need to be validated, the kind of confidence that doesn't need perfect lighting or hairlines, the kind of confidence that stands tall in the body and face. Saying that you're still worthwhile and it's possible. It's not instant to see yourself this way. It's not easy, but it's worth it. Because when your confidence stops being performative, it starts becoming more permanent. So let's talk a little bit about where that kind of confidence actually does come from. It's not the kind that walks into a room demanding attention, right? But it's the kind that quietly commands respect because it's anchored. See, confidence like that is not loud. It's not pushy. It's not in love with its own image per se. It's more so, it's rooted. And it starts with one brutally honest question, and that is, what part of me am I still outsourcing to how I look? Because here's the thing. For many men, hair wasn't just an aesthetic detail. It was this proxy for permission. Permission to feel desirable, to be social, to flirt, to speak confidently, and to belong. And so when it begins to go, what we're actually losing isn't strands of hair per se, it's the emotional permissions that we attached to that aspect of us. And if we never uncouple those things, we lose way more than our reflection. And this is where many men get stuck, right? So instead of grieving the loss and moving through it, instead they start to adapt in ways that only deepen their insecurity. And some get obsessed with regrowth and the solutions around that. And some become more hypercritical about their appearance. They withdraw completely from social spaces. Whereas others, they start overcompensating, if you will, with bravado or sarcasm or even anger. But all of it has the same roots, and that is, I don't feel worthy anymore. And that's the piece that no one really talks about. Not in locker rooms, not in barbershops, not in dating advice columns per se, and not in men's podcasts either. No one says, hey, are you okay? Are you grieving more than just your hairline, perhaps? I mean, what else have you tied to your image that's quietly unraveling in the process? Let's slow it down here, shall we? Because if that's you, if you're quietly watching yourself disappear in your own eyes, I want to say this directly to you. You are not worthless. You are becoming who you are. But for that becoming to be real, you you have to build on something that won't wash away. And that's what makes confidence sustainable. That's what separates the men who crumble from within. That's what differentiates them from those who rise up through it. And it's not genetic. It's not about how many people desire you. It's more about what you believe about your value and what you're willing to build it on, in essence. So let me offer you a reframe, if you will. This one might be helpful. You didn't lose your edge. You're being given the chance to build a new one, though, from your character, not from your aesthetics, not from your youthfulness, not from your depth of voice, but your depth of character, which can only deepen. That kind of edge isn't flashy, but it's magnetic. Because people, especially the ones who are emotionally awake, they don't fall in love with hairlines, do they? They fall in love with presence and with self-trust and with how safe they feel when they're around you. And that safety doesn't come from looking good. It instead comes from being anchored in who you are. So let's talk about that kind of presence, shall we? When a man is at peace with himself, you can feel it in the way he moves. There's no neediness, right? There's no performance. There's no panic in the attention shifts, for example. He doesn't dominate the room. He doesn't disappear either. He simply occupies space with a quiet clarity. He knows who he is, not because people tell him, but because he spent time in his own soul. And he likes who he's becoming. And that's what makes him so attractive. It's not his cheekbones, right? Not his hairline. It's instead his alignment. So how do you build that? Well, you start by being honest about what you're afraid of. Are you afraid of not being desired? Of not being seen, perhaps? Of not being respected? That's good. I want you to name that. And as you name it, I want you to ask, how much of my energy is going toward proving that I'm still valuable instead of becoming someone that I value? See that shift? That shift from proving to actually becoming, that's where it all changes, you see, because you can spend years chasing a feeling that only comes from inner congruence. You can build a body or a wardrobe, an online presence perhaps, and you can still crumble when someone looks at you the wrong way. Or you can slow down and reclaim your dignity and start becoming someone who doesn't need to convince the world. Because when you stop performing, you start anchoring. And anchored men, they're unshakable. So let's take a moment now to talk about the cultural lie that's behind all of this, shall we? And that is that a man's power is in how desirable he is. That's a trap right there. We're taught, whether explicitly or through subtle conditioning, that the more desirable you are, the more successful, the more valuable and confident that you're allowed to be, right? And for a while, maybe that is convincing and maybe it seems to work. Maybe you were the guy with the good hair, the jawline, the attention, and you walked into rooms and you felt noticed. You posted a selfie and you got validation, right? You flirted and got flirted with. But here's the thing about external validation. It it spoils you without strengthening you. It it makes you dependent on being seen in a certain way. It conditions your nervous system to equate visibility with safety. And so when your appearance shifts, when the mirror changes, you don't just feel different, you feel defenseless, right? Because the thing that used to protect you, the image, it's now fading. And without it, you feel exposed. That's the moment where many men either collapse or rebuild. And the collapse looks like panic, right? It looks like shame or withdrawal from dating or social life altogether. It looks like overcompensation through status or control and even resentment towards younger or more attractive men. It shows up maybe in bitterness towards women or culture at large. And those reactions make sense, right? They're survival responses to feeling suddenly unarmed in a world that told you attractiveness was your armor. But here's the problem. If you try to armor up again using your image, you're just gonna lose again because time will always take more. And what it can take, what nothing can take, is what you build from the inside out. So let's talk about what that actually looks like, shall we? It looks like rewriting your relationship with the mirror. Not to love your reflection per se, not to fake confidence, but to stop making your reflection your report card. See, you don't owe the world a flawless face to feel legitimate. You don't owe your past self a promise to never change. But you do owe yourself honesty. You owe yourself consistency. You owe yourself a commitment to live with your worth as if it isn't conditional, because it never was conditional. So here's what I don't think many talk about or will say to you, and that's the most grounded magnetic man that you'll ever meet. They're rarely looking to be the best looking one in the room. But they have a few things in common though. They usually don't apologize for who they are. And they don't over explain themselves. They don't chase validation. And they don't crumble when someone looks past them. They speak slowly and listen deeply, and they carry themselves like they belong. And that confidence, it's not about appearance, is it? It's about presence, right? It's about a presence that can't be faked because it is actually felt. You can't Photoshop it. You can't buy it. You have to become it. And so if you're sitting in this tension and watching your hair thin or your confidence unravel, and you sense that your sense of self is starting to wobble, let that discomfort wake you up. Not to fix your image, but to anchor your identity. Because the longer that you try to fight the external shift, the more energy you waste trying to outrun something that was never meant to define you in the first place. But if you use this moment as a catalyst to go inward, to rebuild your confidence from integrity and not your image, well, you'll come out on the other side stronger than you've ever been. Not because you look better, but because you finally believe. You finally believe that you don't have to be impressive to be worthy, and that you just need to be real. So here's something else that I do want to say to you directly. If you've been if you've been tying your sense of worth or your sense of confidence to what you used to be, to what you used to look like, or to who you used to, like who used to desire you, or to the version of yourself that used to turn heads, it's time to grieve that part. Grieve it and then let it go. Because your power isn't getting back to where you were. It's in becoming someone who you trust now. A man who doesn't flinch at change, but who doesn't build his worth on perception either. A man who walks into a room and doesn't need to dominate it because he's already centered in himself. You see that man? That's who you're becoming. And no hairline can take that away from you. Let me finish with some building blocks, maybe a blueprint for the kind of confidence that lasts, okay? Because this isn't just a pep talk here, it's a reframe, if you will. And reframes, they only matter if they help you live differently. So here are a few steps to start cultivating confidence that doesn't necessarily rely on use or hair or beauty or even validation. Firstly, anchor your identity in your values and not in your vanity. Ask yourself, what do I want to stand for in this world? What values define me when everything else is stripped away? Am I living in a way that reflects those values on a daily basis? Because when your identity is built on values, it can withstand change. Hairlines will recede, bodies will age, attention shifts. But values, they deepen, they sharpen, they multiply in strength when you live them out loud. And so build from the inside out. That's how confidence becomes stable. Secondly, stop asking the mirror for permission. I mean, the mirror was never meant to be your mentor, was it? I mean, it can reflect your appearance, but it cannot determine your worth. And the more often that you look to it for confirmation, the more often control it has over your emotional state then. So try this instead. Spend a week not checking your reflection for approval. Don't fix your hairline, and don't ask your face if you're okay. Instead, measure your day by how much aligned with integrity you feel. That's where lasting approval comes from, when you are able to see you for you. And then thirdly, rebuild social confidence through presence and not performing. You don't need to be the funniest in the room. You don't need to be the most charismatic, the best looking, the most successful. You just need to be present. And that means listening without waiting to speak. It means showing up without overcompensating and letting people experience the grounded version that is you. I mean, this builds a felt sense of safety, and people are drawn to that even more than anything else. Because you don't need to win people over, you instead just need to meet them where they're at. And presence is how you get there. And then fourthly, make peace with the parts of you that are changing. Spend some time and grieve it if you need to. Grieve the younger version of you that once was, the head of hair that you might miss, the attention that you used to get once upon a time, the reflection that felt easier to love. Grieve those things. But don't stop there. Ask as well, what can I love about who I am now becoming? Or who is emerging in this new version of me? What strength is available now that I don't have to perform? This is where emotional maturity begins to formulate. Not by ignoring the loss, but instead by alchemizing it, by turning change into character. And then finally, surround yourself with people who don't need you to perform. You can't sustain confidence in a space that only loves you when you're impressive. Instead, you need relationships that reflect your wholeness, not just your highlights. Now, this may mean stepping away from performative dating culture, or shallow social scenes, or friendships that are built on status games. You need people who see you, especially in the quiet, who celebrate the man beneath the image, and who mirror back not just admiration, but also respect as well. Because that's how you reinforce the confidence that you're building. Now, let's come back to the beginning, shall we? Hair loss? It might seem like a small thing to some people, but for many men, it cracks open a deeper insecurity, doesn't it? They'll say, without the image I was proud of, who am I? Right? And that question it's an opportunity. It's not there to shame yourself per se, and it's not to fight the reality, but an invitation to start living from a deeper truth. You are not the same man that you were in your 20s, right? It's a good thing. Now ask, what kind of man am I becoming now that I've stopped depending on the mirror to tell me what my worth was? If you're building from integrity, or from presence, or from character, then what you're becoming isn't just older, it's actually stronger, it's clearer, it's more trustworthy. And that kind of a man, he walks into rooms differently. He's not needing to be noticed, but impossible to ignore. So if your hair is thinning, let it. What matters is what's growing in its place. And that's your dignity, your sense of depth, your peace. Let that be what people remember after they connect with you. Let that be what you stand on when everything else starts to fade. Because that won't disappear. That becomes your legacy. And that is worthwhile considering.